Shibuya Crossing in Tokyo is the busiest intersection in the world. This scramble allows pedestrians from all corners to cross at the same time. And during peak periods, this can mean 2,500 or 3,000 people in the intersection. You might be familiar with Shibuya Crossing from just about any B-roll compilation of Tokyo, or this scene from Lost in Translation. Or if you're a person of culture, this scene from Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. A few months ago, I asked everyone I knew for video topic suggestions for when I visited Tokyo. A colleague of mine suggested the topic, why is Shibuya Crossing the busiest intersection in the world? And to be honest, back then I didn't think much of the idea. Sorry, Mike. I mean, how interesting is that question considering that the crossing is the intersection right in front of the busiest train station in the world? But when I looked into it, I realized that the busiest train station in the world wasn't here, but it was here. And when I eventually visited Shibuya Crossing, I found it to be surprisingly not that busy. I started to wonder if it even was the busiest intersection in the world, and why was it in front of the fourth busiest train station and not the first? Let's get some answers after the bike bell. My first stop was to verify that Shibuya Crossing had the most pedestrians. So I went right to the source, the International Intersection Certifying Committee. I quickly realized that no such organization exists. I'm also pretty sure that nobody's done a study of all possible busiest intersections in the world and dubbed Shibuya the absolute busiest. I am willing to believe that a single pedestrian signal could see 3,000 people crossing at absolute peak times. Though I have to admit, I'm pretty sure it's a lot less during off-peak periods like a random 10 a.m. in June. This is when I visited, and you can see that it's really not that crowded. Here's a view from above, and you can see there are lots of people, but certainly not at Tokyo Drift levels. Shibuya Crossing's pedestrian counts definitely vary throughout the day and year, and if you want to see it packed, evenings are best, and Halloween is best of all. The crossing turns into a massive costume party, and I gotta believe that's some of the best people watching you'll find anywhere. Okay, if we're willing to believe that Shibuya Crossing really is the busiest intersection in the world, at least during peak periods, then the question remains, why? To answer that, we'll have to hop in our time machines and head back and talk about the history of Shibuya, at least for a minute, or maybe more than a minute. We're gonna take our time machine back to 1885, when what is now known as the Yamanote line connected Shinagawa and the Akabane stations. Shibuya was a station along that line. Over the years, the Yamanote line became a ring around central Tokyo, connecting it and in some cases responsible for most of Tokyo's major business districts. All but 2 of its 30 stations connect to other lines and services. All 3 of the busiest train stations in the world are located on the Yamanote line. Shibuya Station grew by connecting central Tokyo to the western and southern suburbs that started to flourish in the 1920s. Across the world, transit was expanding cities. Here in the United States, this was the heyday of the streetcar suburbs, where rail companies would purchase real estate, sell homes, and use trains to ensure people could go between home and work. This was happening in Tokyo as well. In fact, one such community, Dennen-Chofu, was built during this time according to Garden City principles in vogue in England and the United States. You can see here the telltale curved streets and this charming small-town environment. In 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake leveled much of central Tokyo, and people were eager to head to the suburbs. And Dennen-Chofu became one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the entire metropolis, and today is still considered that. Dennen-Chofu was and is connected to Shibuya Station via the Toyoko line. It's another incredibly busy line that connects Tokyo and Yokohama, hence the name. Dennen-Chofu and the Toyoko line were both owned by what is now known as the Tokyu Corporation. The Tokyo Corporation continued to expand and diversify its business along its rail lines. This is a strategy that every major Japanese rail operator used, and was even used to a greater extent and more successfully than Western rail operators. Tokyu opened its first department store in Shibuya in 1934 and began substantial real estate development in both Shibuya and its Yokohama terminus. These stations became more than just transfer points, but major commercial nodes in a growing polycentric Tokyo metropolis. Tokyo Corporation got a little lucky during this time period thanks to a faithful dog named Hachiko. This dog waited for his owner to come home from work at Shibuya Station every single day. They would walk home together, until one fateful day when the owner died of a cerebral brain hemorrhage on the job and never returned to the station. Hachiko waited for him every day at Shibuya Station for the next 9 years, 9 months, and 15 days, when death finally came for the dog as well. They are buried together. As Hachiko waited day after day, people began to notice and pick up on his story. By 1932, he was a fixture of the station and people gave him treats during his waits. By the time he died, he was so well known that he became a Japanese symbol for loyalty and devotion. Today, there's a statue of Hachiko at Shibuya Station adjacent to the famous crossing. People line up to take pictures with the famous dog in statue form to this day. That exit to the station is even called the Hachiko exit. This dog helped elevate Shibuya Station and eventually the crossing from a mere transit hub into a national landmark. Not all of Shibuya's history is warm and fuzzy though. World War II happened a decade later and left Tokyo and Shibuya scarred and burned. Shibuya during the immediate post-war years was home to US GIs at Washington Heights, located here. This resulted in a mixing of Japanese and American cultures that created a bit of a trendy and cosmopolitan area within Tokyo. In 1964, the Americans moved out of Washington Heights so the space could be used for the Olympic Village and some of the Olympic venues when Tokyo hosted the Games. One of the most amazing venues is Yoyogi National Gymnasium, an architectural icon that hosted basketball events. This distinctive cable-supported roof was designed by Japanese architect Kenzo Tange. The Olympic Games thrust Shibuya into the global spotlight, this time as a representation of Japan's boom years following World War II. And again, young people flocked to Shibuya as it seemed to encapsulate everything modern and new about Japan. After the Olympics, the village site became Yoyogi Park, a large green space known for its street performers, cosplayers, and general countercultural folks. It's also a nice place to take a walk, particularly after a day in hectic Shibuya proper. Okay, so let's take a breather for a second here. We've covered a lot of Shibuya history, from its founding in 1885 to the Olympic Games in 1964. Shibuya Crossing at this time looked like this. Definitely busy by 1960 standards, but still not really close to what it is today. What happened in the last 60 years since the Olympics? Well, basically, Tokyo Corporation happened. While many Japanese rail operators stopped expanding in the 1930s, Tokyo Corporation kept going. After the war, there's a demand for housing, as much of Tokyo's stock had been damaged or demolished. Tokyo built the Denin-Toshi line on the southwest of Tokyo, opening 5,000 hectares for new residential development. This is probably the largest single residential development in the history of Japan. As of the year 2000, it housed 450,000 people and is still growing. All of these commuters are connected by train to Shibuya Station. Here in the United States, we talk a lot about the idea of transit-oriented development, or TOD. I've even done a whole video on this very topic. It's the idea of locating denser development around transit stations to encourage ridership and discourage car use. It's obviously a good idea, and many US regions have had success implementing it. But what Tokyo is doing is so different that researchers have had to invent new terms to describe it. One researcher classifies them as Rail Integrated Communities, or RICs. There are a couple differences between RICs and TODs. One is that they're primarily done by private developers, where TODs are more of a public-private partnership. Secondly, in an RIC, everyone has access to that quality transit, while in a TOD, it's mostly people living in mid-rise structures right near the station. Other researchers have felt the need to coin a new term to describe Shibuya itself. The station area could be considered a TOD, but again, the scale of Shibuya is otherworldly. In the United States, only something like Times Square would come close. The researchers call it a TUC, or Transit Urban Center. Shinjuku would also qualify as a TUC under this definition. Now, what makes them TUCs? Well, first of all, they're a hub for transportation, duh. Secondly, they have complex street patterns. Third, they have high-rise buildings scattered throughout, not all in one place. And finally, they have hidden pockets of public space, and I think this one's really interesting. Shibuya is known for its modernity, but there's still a classic Yokocho alley only a couple of minutes walk from the Hachiko statue. These places are hidden all over Tokyo, particularly around these station areas. They consist of narrow streets, even narrower storefronts, and small wooden buildings. These are almost an anachronism in the increasingly large-scale urbanism of rapidly redeveloping areas like Shibuya. Yet planners and residents realize their value, and not just for Instagram. They create a more dynamic, ever-changing urban environment. Here's one built under the tracks themselves near Ueno Station. Just very, very cool places. And speaking of hidden public spaces, just a few steps from that Yokocho in Shibuya is a modern example. It's Miyashita Park, a public park built on top of a shopping center. You wouldn't even know it was there on street level, but it's there, and it's one of the few green spaces in the busy Shibuya area. The building was completed in 2020, which is probably a good time to bring this video back to the present. Now, I realize I haven't answered the main question of this video yet, but at least I think that I've helped you understand why station areas in Tokyo like Shinjuku and Shibuya are the busiest in the world. Japanese private rail companies basically did TOD so well that we can't even call it that anymore. When a huge percentage of the largest urban area in the world takes trains because everything they need, housing, food, shopping, work, are located near the stations, you're gonna get a lot of riders. And when you have a lot of riders, you have busy station areas. But then I started to get curious about why Shibuya Crossing specifically was the busiest intersection in the world, and why not an intersection in front of some other station? Did it have something to do with the station design or the street pattern? I decided to look into it. Based on my extremely unscientific look at the total number of station entrances and their location in the urban environment, it does seem like Shinjuku has more entrances spread over a wider area than Shibuya, which might serve to distribute passengers better. No need for clogged intersections when you can enter the station blocked from the main platforms. But that still isn't the whole story, because if you look here, you don't even need to leave the station to cross Shibuya Crossing. There are stairs down at the other side of the intersection. Why do people exit through the Hachiko gate and make the crossing at street level? Well, like I said, Hachiko put the intersection on the map, and it started to snowball from there. When you add in the Association of Japanese Youth Culture and the Tokyo Corporation's continued investment in the area, and you have a recipe for a pretty busy pedestrian environment. It's become a cornerstone place in the Tokyo street fabric, and as the word got out internationally that Shibuya Crossing was the busiest, it only supercharged the number of pedestrians there, including people like me who visited the district in part to experience it. In fact, Shibuya Crossing is unique in that it's a participatory tourist attraction. It's not like a museum or a statue or some other static landmark. It's famous for people just crossing the street. And it's kind of ephemeral too, because there are different people crossing every light cycle. And it allows a tourist like me to take part in the ritual by crossing the street. I don't know how I feel about being a tourist attraction and visiting the tourist attraction at the same time, but it's kind of cool. This influx of foreign tourists visiting Shibuya Crossing further adds to the list of reasons why Shibuya is #1. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. It's the busiest, therefore people want to see it, which increases its crossing numbers, which means it's the busiest. So this is my second Japan video, and I have one more coming out. And if you really like this topic, maybe you want to check it out right now. You can, because I posted it already over on the streaming service Nebula. I always post my content early there, meaning when you see a new video on YouTube, my next one's already out on Nebula, and that one happens to be about Japan. Because we're filled with thoughtful creators, we have some pretty smart features built into Nebula. First of all my videos posted on YouTube are already up early on Nebula. That means you can sign up for Nebula right now and watch my next video without waiting a few weeks for it to appear on YouTube. That's pretty great already. Nebula also has no ads, making the entire viewing experience better for you, and it also makes it better for the creator because we're able to produce Nebula original series that can focus on being great instead of being great at pleasing the YouTube algorithm. These are passion projects that answer the question, what would videos from great creators look like if they had more resources to do that thing? 2023 was a great year for Nebula Originals. I even put out a Nebula Original series called Great Cities that profiles some of the most influential cities right at the inflection points that made them great. You can learn about why Venice built canals and why New York built Central Park. It's some of my best work because Nebula provided additional resources, and it's only available there. There is so much great exclusive content on the platform right now too. The ever-popular Jetlag series starring the crew from Wendover Productions and Half as Interesting. For those who don't know, it's like a travel game show that's incredibly addictive and tailor-made for anyone who likes my channel. Real Life Lore continues to publish excellent episodes of their Modern Conflict series. Real Science has a series where two amateur naturalists try to survive using only tools from the Paleolithic. In all, Nebula offers you, the viewer, an ad-free experience filled with videos produced by a curated group of thoughtful YouTubers. And those thoughtful creators are also publishing big-budget, high-quality exclusive content. And you get all of this for a surprisingly affordable price. When you sign up at my link, nebula.tv/citybeautiful, you get 40% off an annual subscription. My channel will even get a portion of that subscription fee as long as you say subscribed. So it's one of the best ways to support me and this channel. If you want to go above and beyond in your support, we offer lifetime memberships. You pay $300 once, and then you never pay again. This is one of the ways that we're supporting some of our big budget projects and our expansion plans. We don't want to take outside investors. We want you, the audience, to be our investor, and this is the way that we're doing it. So there you have it. Early access, no ads, big budget originals, and more coming down the pipeline. Now's a great time to sign up for Nebula, and it's such an affordable thing to do. So go click on the link on screen or in the description and sign up and support this channel. Thank you so, so much.